Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Drunken Idaho podcast. This is episode 5, and I'm here with my co-host, Jake. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, what's going on, Mr. Ron?
I'm doing well.
Oh, dude.
You didn't ask, but I'm doing well.
Oh, man. Dude, we're in for some shit, dude.
Yes.
Fucking Jodorowsky's Dune.
Yep. This
Holy
is
shit.
something we've talked about for a while. And
Definitely.
By the way, welcome back, because
Yeah, it's been a while.
it's been a long time. This is our Dune podcast, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
For
dude,
those just jumping in.
Yeah, it's been a while, but like, really, you should only do one of these when you kind of have something to talk about or have something to fuck around with. And
I agree.
we finally, the both of us sat down and watched the Dune documentary, the whole Jodorowsky fucking thing, and it was just so batshit crazy that we just had to sit around and talk about it for a few minutes. Like what the fuck was going on with this movie? Set up to be a masterpiece, but just such a fucking wacky concept, you know? Like, I almost don't know how to describe it. How it was set up, you had all of these amazing minds and artists coming together to try and make some coherent version of whatever property they had. So Dune.
I actually, when I watched this documentary, I wasn't the Dune fanatic that I am now. Like, obviously, I have a lot of Dune-related stuff on my channel, right?
Yeah.
So before this documentary, you know, we were just talking about this before. I was probably like 22 or something. I read Dune for the first time.
Right.
Didn't really understand it. It's for something didn't click with me at the time.
I felt the same way.
You know what I mean? The first time you read it, I think it has that effect on a lot of people that are just starting
it's
to.
dense. It's fucking dense. I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
So I still, for some reason, was interested in this movie because it just, this documentary, it looked interesting to me.
Right.
And I really enjoyed it, even when I didn't really know a lot of the backstory of Dune and the lore. And you really don't need to know it for this movie because it's really more about a filmmaker that had a vision that was just, I think, a little too much, too ahead of its time in a way.
Yeah, I guess his imagination was a little ahead of its time.
Yeah.
I guess that could be indicative of, you know, some of his other movies and stuff like that. Stuff like El Topo or The Holy Mountain or Santa Sangre or Dance of Reality. Like, there's a bunch of really fucking weird ass movies that this dude has done.
Yes. So I'm going to stop you right here because I am familiar with Jodorowsky from obviously his comic book work.
Okay. Incal,
because the first time I watched this documentary, by the way, this is a documentary I probably watched like 4 or 5 times.
Me too. It's one I've revisited.
Because, I don't know, there's something, you could find something new every time you watch it, which is weird saying that about a documentary, because usually you're talking about cinema and you know, movies that are classics, and a lot of people say that about movies where I go back and I find new details that I didn't know before. But this documentary kind of has that aspect to it in a weird way.
It has so many moving parts. You know, like there are so many little these little furnaces of ambition in this fucking involved with this movie, whether it be Jean Giraud, you know, Mobius, or H.R. Giger, or Dan O'Bannon.
Well, that's the most fascinating part of this documentary for me. All of basically Jodorowsky, to me, just watching this documentary as much as I have, he's a better talent agent than any of the fucking people in Hollywood, because he recruited all of these geniuses that went on to create amazing things for Hollywood and for motion pictures. After this movie didn't, you know, get off the ground. And I just think it's amazing that every single person, for the most part, that he, you know, involved. He recruited for, you know, his Dune team. Went on to be something amazing, you know, and did a really great movie or whatever.
Yeah, they were all successful pretty much.
That to me is the coolest part of this movie. Not even so much the Dune aspect of it, which
Right.
is weird because we're doing a Drunken Idaho podcast. But I mean, we'll get into that too.
Sure.
So. But before we do,
right.
I know you have a lot more history with the films of Jodorowsky than I do.
Yeah, I might be a little more familiar.
Yeah.
With just it's just weird.
So just kind of give us like a little bit of a background of like where he came from and what his kind of claim to fame was.
So he does everything in his power to make you feel like he's some sort of bizarre mystic, you know, like he's just this, he's almost needlessly esoteric and mysterious. And it's kind of been like that since day one. Like even his upbringing and where he comes from is somewhat strange. Like way back in the day, I think he was born in like the 40s or something like that. He comes from, I believe, Ukrainian parents, and they moved to Chile. And so he was raised in South America. Then somewhere around college, he decides to go to France, I guess, and he studies being a mime and the theater and all that nonsense. And he brings it back to Mexico, and he makes a film called Fando Elise. And that was just bizarre, and you know he couldn't really sell it. It fucking kind of ruined him. He went against the protocol of what it was to like make a movie in Mexico at that time, and that got him into some trouble. But he got out of it, and then he made a movie called El Topo, which is one of the first midnight movies back in 1970, and that translates into The Mole. It's kind of an Eastern Western. That is kind of the only way to describe it. It's like some dude trying to bring all these Eastern concepts into the idea of a Western film, which was big back then. Like that was just something you kind of did. Easier type film to make, but you know, odd movie, really good fucking movie though. And then a handful of years later, they did. John Lennon saw that movie because he was super into like midnight movies and all that shit, and he decided to approach Jodorowsky and wanted to finance something from him. And then years later, they made The Holy Mountain. That's when I believe that's when the whole Dune thing came about. Right after then, right around that time.
So yeah, that's what a lot of I guess you'd call them like cinephiles all know his work with El Topo and Holy Mountain, right?
Absolutely.
Like that's like a big like cult kind of like cult movies in a way.
Definitely, like there are other ones. You have like Santa Sangre and some of his like later shit, but it's not nearly as important to cinema as the shit from the 70s was.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and then the thing that got me into his comics was the first time I watched this documentary. I remember really, because you know what I loved in the beginning is they actually show his book, like the Dune book. It's like his Bible.
The tome.
Yeah. And basically it's like, I guess it's like the whole storyboard of the entire movie and every concept that he had.
Yep.
That just looks so cool. From the first time I watched it, I guess, yeah, like you were saying before, because we had a conversation about it, the rights issue, you probably couldn't put out because it's Dune. You probably couldn't put that out.
Somebody has the rights to something.
But I wish they would make some sort of deal to maybe even do like a limited pressing and just kind of recreate that so people can kind of have it and look at what was, you know, supposed to happen in the movie, which is really interesting to me. The closest thing was a lot of the comics he did with Mobius, who was one of the artists that he brought on
after they tried to make Dune,
and a lot of the concepts, because I mean both of us have read the Incal.
Oh yeah, I love that.
And there are some concepts that kind of made their way into, and from what I have heard, because I haven't fully read it yet, and I'm ashamed of myself for not doing it, it takes it even further in the Metabarons as well, right?
Yeah, no, the Metabarons gets to a point of absurdity.
Yeah.
It's really Metabarons is the art is fucking something else. It's incredible. That's a whole nother fucking conversation, man. But like honestly, this movie conflicted. That's the one big word that would pop out of my head about how I'd feel about Jodorowsky in general directing a movie like Dune. So in terms of, you know, you kind of have an understanding of Jodorowsky. So it's like, how do you feel about him handling Dune? Like, do you feel like it would have been a faithful adaptation of what Dune was, or Jodorowsky getting out of control and taking the concept of Dune and trying to fucking do whatever the hell he could with that. You know, how do you feel about Jodorowsky handling Dune? Would it have been a faithful adaptation?
No, not at all.
I agree.
I mean, you could clearly see it, and he talks about it a lot in this documentary. He basically says that he literally says he's gonna rape it.
Yeah, he does.
Like the material.
Yeah, you know? Yes, that's verbatim what he says
like
in the documentary.
His metaphor for it or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
which is I get what he's saying. It's very extreme.
Yeah, he's trying to be artistic.
Right. He's like, but out of love, because I love it, I'm going to like defile it.
No, it's not raped. It's rapid. Do you feel like it would have been a watchable
you would have
movie?
To. Yes, you would. Well, to me, it would because both of us like weird shit.
Oh, definitely.
You would have to divorce yourself from Dune and what you know of Dune and go into this movie as a totally different thing, just with some characters have the same name.
So it's kind of,
you know, like,
so it's autonomous.
Yeah, like you would have to really just, let's put it in comic book terms, right? This is the Elseworlds Dune.
Okay.
This is some crazy guy got a hold of it and could do whatever he wants with it.
Right.
So just go with it.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I probably really would have enjoyed the weird shit that he would have done, and especially because of all the people that are working on it or were supposed to work on it.
Yeah.
But no, it wouldn't have been faithful at all, and it probably would have. Because was this supposed to come out in the 70s? I forget.
Yeah, late 1970s.
Yeah. This would have drove the fans of the original book insane when they saw it in theaters. Yeah, I think critics would have loved it because it was just like...
It would have been an art house movie.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's what would have been interesting to me. It would have been like an art house science fiction movie.
Right.
You know, and not in that shitty modern understanding of what that might be with like, you know, David Lynch or like a typical art house director taking over a science fiction property that they have no connection to or interest in and doing what they can do with it. Like it's generally very unsuccessful. So I'm somewhat skeptical on how a movie like this would have really turned out to be in the, like originally they were calling for this movie to be like fucking 10 hours. Or
yeah. Well, that's what I mean. He was so ambitious, but I in a way, I like that attitude. It's like, well, why can't a movie be 10 hours? Like,
because nobody can sit for 10 hours.
No, I know. And this is why we have like TV. He was thinking like the TV model just back in the day.
Pretty much. Like if it was like a limited series by Jodorowsky on Dune, it would have been just as incomprehensible and nonsensical, but it would have been fucking interesting. You know, like I could watch that.
But that's what I mean. I think he was a little ahead of his time because he's like, why can't it be that many hours? You know, like
no, I agree. And I agree with that. It's like, who's to tell you what your, I guess, in his head, artistic expression, or what to tell you what to do with your art.
He's whatever. A true artist. True artists don't know. I don't know. I think he's very naive to the whole Hollywood, circle of people and the way they do things and what the general audiences would have liked. In a way, the thing is,
do you think he was concerned with that when he was trying to make the movie?
No, he was. I think he was just totally consumed with his idea of what his vision and the passion that went into it. And I understand that because, I'm like a creative person. I get an idea for something and I fucking start doing it. And this is why like I can't start to do something. Like I'll think of a cool idea and I'm like, I'm not even going to attempt to do it because I'll forget to eat. I'll just start like working on something and I'll just forget everything in the world. And it's like, I can't do that anymore. Like I have kids,
It's just, I agree.
One of the most heartbreaking parts of this documentary is you see him getting kind of pissed. Like he kind of remembers like, oh shit, this didn't get made. And he gets a little pissed off and he's
Bitterness.
and he's kind of like, why can't I do this?
Right.
And I totally get that. It's like, I think he's, frustrated that money is a thing and it's like you need the money to fund your crazy ideas and it's like, well, why can't I fucking do it? Why can't I put this out? And I think that's why he got into comics because there's no fucking budget in comics.
He's
you know what I mean?
He's fine. I totally understand what you're saying. Jodorowsky's just an odd dude because he is very prolific.
Yeah.
The guy's been coming out with shit forever, and like even most of his movies have only been made available really on Blu-ray at least for the last 10 years, 15 years, if that. I would like to think it would have been cogent, somewhat coherent, and at least respectful to the source material when he finally released a movie. I doubt it would have been a relevant, anywhere near relevant interpretation of what Dune actually is in literary form.
Not at all.
I don't know if it would have detracted from that or if it wouldn't have. I'm not quite sure how I feel about it.
It would have been one of those things that it's like, this is loosely based on, Frank Herbert's
Here's
novel.
a 10-hour loosely based interpretation of a book he read once.
But the other thing too, like to separate myself from like my fandom of Dune and the source material.
Right.
There have been so many movies that were taken from a small concept of a book and then completely changed into movies and made into good movies. I think the problem with this is Dune is such a beloved, sci-fi movie. I mean, book.
Yeah.
That to do that to that material is kind of like sacrilege, So it's So that's the problem. But in his mind, he's like, other people have done that, so I'm going to do my own. Well,
back then, it also wasn't that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like it was respected, but it wasn't this speculative fiction institution.
Right. You know what I mean? A lot of things, they take a certain amount of time to grow an even bigger fan base, People are very opinionated about that, and that's fine. I mean,
it's still regarded as one of the best science fiction books ever written. You know what I mean? So it's like, but back when he was making this movie, it wasn't necessarily that. Yeah. It was just a science fiction story. So one big thing when the concept of a Jodorowsky Dune that comes to mind is when I look at Jodorowsky, it's almost somebody like David Lynch and auteurs, just everything it's very artistic. It left up to interpretation. So I feel like a Lynch and a Jodorowsky Dune would have been theoretically a bit similar. It would have been an art house science fiction movie. How do you think comparatively, because we all know how Lynch's version turned out to be, do you think that this would have been somewhat similar because of how out there it kind of is? Or do you think it would have been a better science fiction movie? Not a better Dune movie, because we all, well, you and I kind of feel the same way about that. Like, that's been expressed. But just a science fiction movie.
I definitely think it would have been better just with like the scope and the vision.
Right.
Because if he was making it, it would have been like uncompromised. And even when Lynch was making it, like the reason he took his name off it was because like, Dino De Laurentiis or whatever, like they had a lot of input into all of it. So it was kind of hindered like immediately, like
definitely. But he wasn't right for that movie anyway.
No, I know he wasn't, but actually both of them weren't right for it because like I really think like the way I don't know, I saw like clips of his movies in the beginning of this documentary. Like he's like the fucking, I don't know, what's his nationality?
Ukrainian, parents moved to Chile. He speaks multiple languages.
Okay, so he's like that version of David Lynch. Like for his country, like that's their David Lynch.
Definitely. Oh, definitely.
You know what I mean? Because he does have the same mindset and the same like
he's
very out there. Nothing really makes sense. But the thing is with Dune, you kind of have to have like some sort of like world building and continuity and stuff. And I don't think he really cared about that. He just cared more about the concepts and like spiritual stuff. You know?
I think he cared more about his idea of Dune more than Dune itself.
Right. But I think he was just a really good idea man. And then he also...
one of the best.
But the cool thing was he was a good collaborator as well. So all the people we mentioned, like Mobius and Giger and, Chris Foss, who did really cool like ship designs and stuff.
Oh, yeah, no, great.
I think, I don't know, as great as all those people are, I think it is like a too many cooks in the kitchen thing, where it could be just kind of like a mess of aesthetics, like.
But when these people, like even in the documentary, they go into this, like all these people that are talking about working with Jodorowsky, it's nothing but respect. When all is said and done,
yeah,
if this movie was made, would you give it a chance?
Absolutely, dude. I would love to see this movie.
All right.
You know why? Just because it would be so much more interesting. Take the Dune lore and what we know and what we love about Dune. Take that out of the equation.
Right.
It would be so refreshing to see this bizarre fucking sci-fi movie with all these great concept artists and everything. Just think about the shit we get now is so bland. Like this would have been amazing.
Oh,
to watch.
It would have been,
especially if you're stoned.
Oh, definitely, which I am. It would have been different. Honestly, I would have. Who in their right mind wouldn't give this fucking movie a chance? But
no, I also understand like the studios and like the reason it didn't get made because it was too ambitious. It was way too ambitious.
I don't think it. Yeah, it was that, but I think it was a bunch of other things.
Because a lot of people in like earlier films in Hollywood, like take a look at like Terminator, for example.
Okay.
Low budget movie, like it was possible to make that happen. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah. No,
it's a good concept, and then they could execute it with a short, like a limited budget. No, this movie, he's like, I want it to be 10 hours long, and I want to have like 8 bands doing the soundtrack.
Oh, dude,
like it was just too ambitious.
Yeah, it was too. It would have been a clusterfuck. I think even if they made it, I probably would have described it as a clusterfuck. Honestly, I would have gave it a chance. I wish they made this movie. I wish they would make this movie into take the storyboards they have and all the info and turn it into an animated movie. That'd be awesome. Fucking awesome. That will never happen.
Well, that's the thing is he put a lot of concepts into his comics, but he can't make like his Dune a comic because of the rights and everything, unfortunately.
Yeah, but there has to be some separation between the, regular cinematic rights and the animated rights. So if they could differentiate that, that would be fucking cool.
You never know. Someday it could come out. Even like the storyboards will come out as a book.
Print that book. Like it's that ridiculous tome of a Dune book. He was flipping over his fucking knee for half of that goddamn documentary.
I want it.
But so how'd you feel about it?
Jodorowsky, just as a documentary, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's the only documentary I've watched more than once. Like if you think about it.
No, that's not true.
Well, for me at least.
Not for me. I fucking love that shit.
But
wacky fucking dude, man.
Yeah. Really, really good documentary. I would highly suggest it, even for like Dune fans. It's cool to see. But honestly, even if you don't like Dune at all, don't even know what it is, and you're just into movies, and like I'm always fascinated with like, oh, this was supposed to be the best album and it never got made, or this was supposed to be the best movie and it never got made. This is one of those documentaries.
It's approachable.
Yeah.
It's like,
and it's very well done.
Needless, Jodorowsky's kind of ridiculous, and he's needlessly esoteric, and he tries to be mysterious, and he has all that bullshit going on with him, like the psycho magic thing, and like the tarot cards, and all this kind of crazy shit that doesn't make any fucking sense. Yeah. But it's approachable.
Oh yeah,
and he's an interesting dude. Like when he talks, you want to listen to him. It's
oh my god, he's great.
Not that you agree with what he's saying or anything like that. It's just like he's just interesting to listen to spout some fucking nonsense for a little while.
He's so entertaining.
He definitely is.
I love just like it's so great. So highly recommended from both of us, and it's great to have the Drunken Idaho podcast back.
Man, fucking watch this documentary. Good shit.
All right, Jake. Well, I want to thank you for coming out and talking about this documentary with me.
Man.
I'll see you next time.
Dude, it was fun. I love talking about Jodorowsky and Dune.
Yep.
This was fucking great, man. I said, see ya!
We'll see you next time, guys. Take care. Hey everyone, it's Ron here with a quick announcement. When I started this channel, I was reading and reviewing the Dune books and other sci-fi related material, and most of you might not know that I'm also a musician. So when I was reading these sci-fi books, I started to get inspired and decided to make my own soundtrack to use for my videos, and now I'm excited to tell you all about the first volume in the Ron Reviews original soundtrack collection. This album includes the first 17 tracks featured on my channel, and it's available now exclusively on Bandcamp. Be sure to check the description of this video for the link to the album. Thanks so much for the support so far. I know I'm just starting out, but I hope you're having as much fun as I am. So check out the original soundtrack Volume 1 on Bandcamp. This music is great if you want something moody and atmospheric to listen to while you're reading some science fiction. I think you're going to love it. Thanks.